And the brilliance of Ray Amaya with another great intro, another great day. Blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Our phone numbers are 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Joining us now from the RNC, our great friend Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, good to have you back.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You know, and unlike Harris Faulkner last week on Fox, I'll let you get the last word.
She always gives me the last word. I love her, but she's got to be fair and switch it up.
I'm with you. I mean, I thought you did a great job, and you're going, dude, I do a million appearances. This guy in Idaho is going to get me on one. No, I just, you were going back and forth during the Kavanaugh stuff. I think it was like Thursday or Friday of last week, and I was just bummed out that, they gave the Democrats more time than you. But, again, that's my own personal issue, I guess.
Hey, I always like it when Republicans get more time. There's no doubt about that.
Well, let's do some review and commentary and some insight over what was, I guess, indescribable, the Kavanaugh hearings last week.
Yeah, they were truly indescribable. I mean, if you would have asked me beforehand what was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have guessed that you would have a Democrat yelling, "I am Spartacus" from the Senate floor. But nevertheless, you definitely heard that in that Judiciary Committee room right there. Cory Booker lying outright. He knew that there had been this agreement to release these documents, but nevertheless, he took to the Senate floor grandstanding. I'm going to get expelled from the Senate. I'm going to rebel. I'm going to release these documents without approval. So he outright misled the American people, but probably improved his 2020 chances because the crazier you get, the more likely you are to win the Democratic nomination, it seems.
And we'll get to that impact on the midterms, but going back to Kavanaugh, again, you take a look at just the bizarro world that it was. I don't know how much crazier it can get without really breaking down the entire process, the organized protesters, the disruptions. We've seen this in the House where people just continue to call points of order on topics that are irrelevant to the case.
Right, that's exactly right. And, just obstructing and resisting, that is what Democrats do. There's no questioning that Judge Kavanaugh is qualified for this position, but it's unfortunate that in this day and age, we can no longer get votes where you get, 80, 90 votes. If he gets confirmed, and I think he will be, 51, 52, as high as 55 votes. But those are the partisan times we live in, that Democrats aren't willing to truly assess the qualifications. They're just willing to try to stop every aspect of the Trump presidency.
Well, and we're seeing that again with all these allegations. We're seeing this with the release of more of the Strzok Page documents, Bruce Orr and others. Is it a race to get to the truth? Because you have so many of these folks that want to get rid of the president, no matter how great the economy is, Kayleigh, no matter how great people are feeling about America, no matter how much the military is enjoying actually getting some funding to do their missions for a change.
Right, because for Democrats, it's not about that. It's not about progress for the nation. It's not about economic well-being or strength on the world stage or prosperity and security. It's really just about rectifying what they see as rectifying the results of the 2016 election. From the moment President Trump was elected, from the moment he got inaugurated, there was one singular goal, and it was stop the president. And it was the left in line with the mainstream media trying to do it. That's why they concocted this Russia collusion theory out of thin air. It's why, you see them trying to stop every agenda item of the president, every single nominee. The agenda is stop the president. It's an agenda of negativity. It has no positive aspect to it, but that's the real motive and underlying goal of the left.
Kayleigh McEnany joining us from the RNC. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. No, Kayleigh, we were in Washington last week, and y'all have that humidity that we don't have here in Idaho. Hopefully you're doing a little better, and hopefully the storm won't hit you.
I know. I hope not either. We got a little rain last night. It looks like we're going to get some rain going into Friday, but fortunately we're safe for most of it. And, our thoughts are with our friends down in the Carolinas. We hope they all evacuate in those zones because it's a very serious storm.
Indeed. And speaking of very serious and perhaps a storm, we keep hearing the rumblings of the blue wave, the blue storm, the storm surge. Where are we in the midterms? We're less than 8 weeks out. Your thoughts?
Well, we're looking at, and we see some positive trends, certainly on the economy and elsewhere, and the polling that asks voters if they're going in the right direction. But a lot of these races are too close for comfort. Ted Cruz's race, for example, this is where the president's going to go in and really be the game changer to secure that Senate seat. But a lot of these are too close. And that's why it is so important that Republicans turn out, because we can win. We can defy history, but we cannot do it if Republican voters stay at home. Look at your state's rules, and I'm sure that it allows early voting like my state of Florida does. Get out an early vote, call your supervisor of elections, get a ballot beforehand. Republican voters have to turn out because a lot of these races are within the margin of error, or Democrats are a few points ahead.
Well, when you talk about Ted Cruz, there's been articles about that. That was a very contentious primary, yet the president will be coming in to Texas. How do you see Texas playing out, where you've got billions of outside dollars coming in to try and unseat the popular and conservative Ted Cruz? Can you give us some insight into Texas? And I'd love to hear a little bit about Florida, because you have like 3 or 4 different countries in Florida, it seems.
Well, in Texas, it's, as I said, too close for comfort, but Ted Cruz fortunately has a great infrastructure. He's an incumbent. He has the ground game. He knows the voters. Texas is a red state. So I think he just needs the game changer to come in, and that would be President Trump. And I do think that he will win re-election, but it is close. As you said, outside dollars pouring in, no doubt about that. And down in my state of Florida, we have a gubernatorial race that's a bit concerning. I never thought that we'd see a socialist nominated to the Democratic Party in Florida, but that's what we have on our hands, someone who wants to start a revolution. He's within 2 or 3 points of beating Ron DeSantis, who's a national conservative figure. And Senate race, on the other hand, Rick Scott is ahead. He's a great candidate, great governor, and he's a few points ahead of Bill Nelson, who's an incumbent who's been there for far too long. He's been there since I was just a young girl. So we've got 2 close races on our hands, not to mention a bunch of House seats.
Kayleigh McEnany joining us from the RNC. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kayleigh, just a couple more questions here. Montana, that's really the closest competitive state to us, really. I don't think anything's going to happen in Utah. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but Montana, you still have that tight race, and the president was there last week.
You do. You have Jon Tester, who's someone who's trying to have his cake and eat it too. He has not stood with the president. He did not vote on tax cuts. He did not help with infrastructure or immigration reform. Was not someone who came to the table on those 2 issues either, or any other number of issues. But he's out with an ad touting the number of times he's worked with the president, saying, I can count on both hands the number of times I worked with the president. Well, no, you haven't, Jon Tester. So, we're looking to unseat him. I think that's one of the most flippable seats in the country. But again, it all comes down to turnout.
It does. And of course, you have people wanting to stifle turnout with this anonymous article, editorial in the New York Times last week, the Bob Woodward book. I don't know if we've ever had anybody in an administration allegedly make these accusations and, not come forward.
Right. And they would have never allowed anything of this sort in the Obama administration back when we had all those scandals, from Benghazi to IRS Tea Party bullying to the gun running scheme with Fire and Fury. Never would have been allowed in that case. But here we have the New York Times publishing the words of a coward, someone who calls himself an unsung hero, but he or she is nothing of the sort. And of course, there is always the option that the New York Times, pin this themselves and attributed it to an anonymous source that doesn't exist. So I don't put that past the mainstream media, but, regardless, let's suggest that it's true. It's very troubling that you have someone in there actively working against the agenda of the American people.
Kayleigh, you take a look at this Woodward book. The left is going crazy on this. Governor Christie said, look, he never substantiated anything with me. Bob Woodward does this every administration, sometimes 2 or 3 books per administration. Your thoughts?
That's right. He does. And every administration calls him out. He's been called out by Reagan, by George W. Bush, by George H.W., by Clinton, by the Obama administration. He's been called out by every single one who have rejected his reporting. But, if you don't believe the words of politicians or presidents, he's been rebuked by fellow journalists, a fellow New York Times Pulitzer Prize winner who said, I'm embarrassed to stand in my profession. And yet another example during the Obama administration where an NBC correspondent, Alex Seifwald, said this guy, as you noted, publishes anonymous source book after anonymous source book. And at what point do you have to ask, are these books accurate? So The reporting class, the journalist class, have rejected the reporting of Bob Woodward, but now, of course, he's hailed as a hero because it's Trump's name on the front of the book.
Yeah, and again, finally, the leakers. Your thoughts on that? We've waited so long for a president that actually gets results, and then you have people that perhaps have left, perhaps never were in the inner circle, just trying to disrupt him. You expect that from people on the left, but not people on our own team.
Right, and my message to them would be get out. Get out if you want to stay in and leak for self-interested purposes. It's time for you to exit because President Trump, he's fighting the media, he's fighting the Democrats, but why should he have to fight people within his own administration? This is a sacrosanct kind of job when you work in the White House. You should be able to go in, bat around ideas, discuss policies, and come out and have the security of knowing your internal conversations will not be leaked, mischaracterized, and turned into fake news by the media. But unfortunately, this White House doesn't have that luxury at the moment, and it's time for these leakers to go.
Well, Kayleigh, on that note, I guess it's time for you to go, but we always appreciate you. We're big fans, and thank you so much for keeping us informed here in Idaho.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin. All
right. Thank you, Kayleigh. Kayleigh McEnany joining us. You can catch her on the Fox News channel all the time. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You remember corporal punishment? Yeah, corporal punishment. Coming up next, one school system reinstates the paddle policy. Of course I'm laughing. When we're too old to get paddled, it's not a big deal, but we'll talk a little bit about that and this leaker. All that and more next. Thank you for starting your day with us. We really appreciate it. Tell a friend. We'd love to be here for a few more years. Kevin Miller, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. All right. Howdy-ho. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, a good one. First, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. This was yesterday's Miller Minute. We were going over the comments of Sarah Huckabee Sanders concerning the leaker from last week. Let's take a listen.
It's frankly, I think, sad and pathetic that a gutless, anonymous source could receive so much attention from the media. And I think that the American people would be much better served if we actually spent some time talking about some of the really important things that are facing our country and the things that this administration is doing to help fix them.
Right. You have this leaker that's going after the president and this blue wave and everything else. I have to say this. That it is a challenge for any administration that's going through their first midterms. Usually, look, Obama got wiped out in 2010. It was the wave that elected Congressman Labrador, right? And then he got wiped out again in 2014. Historically, that's what happens. And you've got 40 Republicans retiring, is it? 40, 50 Republicans retiring. You've got all these other things going on. It's going to be tough to maintain the House. The Senate, the Republicans should pick up seats, but now it's getting crazy. But remember, right before the election, it got crazy, and once again, everybody said that the president was going to lose. Mitt Romney looked more of a sure thing. Maybe even, not John McCain, God rest his soul, looked more of a sure thing, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. This is going to be a tough one. We're doing our very best to get the president to Idaho. I haven't forgotten about our pledge to do that. In fact, I reached out to the White House before I went to D.C., tried to get a hold of them while I was in D.C., and it's been tough. We're going to continue to work on that. The challenge for us in Idaho, to quote Butch Otter, is that we're the reddest of the red. Now, some of you will say, well, Kevin Miller, we've got squishy Republicans, we've got these Republicans, we've got so many other Republicans and everything else. Sure. But predominantly, the state is Republican. You don't have a tough matchup. Brad Little will roll over Paulette Jordan. It's just going to be very easy. It's funny. I was on the connector yesterday, and I saw somebody with a Paulette Jordan bumper sticker. And it was, probably a lady in her 50s. I think she was driving a Buick or something like that. Nothing against Buicks. They're great cars. But I wanted to see what type of person felt so compelled. And really, a vote for Jordan, they are the bluest of the blue. But there simply aren't enough of them. So the president is focused on states like Montana. It's interesting because I see all the media attention that Montana gets, and we don't play on the Montana team. We play on the Idaho team. And I'm sitting there going back and forth going, boy, it would be nice to have that stuff here. But if we do get the president here, it will be because of you and your great work. He's going to be traveling all over the country. Again, we're going to hope to make that happen. So trying to fight the blue wave. So on one hand, you have that going on. On the other hand, you have this leaker who has made all these unsubstantiated allegations going up against the administration.
They are attempting to undermine the executive branch. That would certainly be problematic and something that the Department of Justice should look into.
Right. Whether or not the Department of Justice should look into going after this leaker. You know, it comes down to this. Whether we're at a job, whether we're in a church, whether in a family, do you want to be here? And if this person doesn't want to be in the administration, shouldn't they just resign? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Shouldn't they just step down as opposed to writing this thing, giving the press the talking points? And, you know, what was it? Some guy that used to work at the paper. Paper's gone through a lot of people lately. Have you noticed, those of you that still read the paper, their commitment to local journalism, allegedly? I think it's catching up with them. People just don't like to pay for the lib stuff. Fortunately, thanks to our great sponsors and supporters, we're free. But my point being, I was interviewed once by a guy who's now in Texas that worked for the paper. And I said, this is going to be the golden age of talk radio. This is going to be bigger than 1994. And I truly believe that it is going to be bigger. But I underestimated just how much the press will lie to distort the president. Now, Meet the Press is a liberal show. We don't air that on this station. We air Fox News Sunday because we're affiliated with the right network, Fox News. So, but if you watch those shows, you would be convinced that the president is bad, that he's going to be not only impeached, jailed, imprisoned for all these fake, phony crimes. That does not benefit the United States of America, does it? More on that in a minute. KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:26. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Time to get you to work safely and on time.
Jim Duffy.
Thank you, Jim. Let's hear what y'all have to say. You Talk and Miller in the Morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Matt in Caldwell. Matt, I believe we ran into each other recently. Good morning.
Yes, we did. We ran into each other at the Balloon Festival.
That's right. Good to finally meet you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I wanted to comment about your tweet, the leaker. Anyway, I don't see Trump being one of those people not wanting to find that person and getting out there and showing who this coward is. But in the same sense, I'm not going to put it past him to let it bug him so much to throw this election. I mean, he's going to be out there campaigning for the Republicans who want to be in office, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be out there trying to find a replacement for Jeff Sessions as well. I don't understand how a person can go through anything in that establishment and not protect the president or protect the president's ideals. I know that kind of sounds a little bit one-sided, but in the same sense, you're there to establish law, not establish what everybody else wants.
Right, you're there to serve.
Yeah, exactly. Protect and serve and protect your country. I mean, to recuse yourself is ridiculous. But in the same sense, the leaker, they're going to find him. Whoever it is, him or her, it's going to be exposed. I don't see this not getting put in this on the back burner. They're going to find this person, and that person's life is going to be destroyed. Regardless, they just did it to themselves. I guess the little bit of fame that they might get from, creating a book about what's going on and how little they actually know what's going on, even though they say they're one of the senior affiliates. But it's going to be crazy. I can't wait. I look forward to see more about this leaker exposed and how well the elections turn out. Have a wonderful morning.
Matt, God bless you as well. Take care, sir.
Bye, sir.
All right. Great to hear from Matt and Caldwell. Coming up next, we'll hear from Doug in Mountain Home, David in Nampa, and you. Time to prosecute the leaker. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin.
And rolling along, there's a hurricane coming, and NBC wants you to know about it.
President Trump in the Oval Office late today said the federal government is, quote, absolutely and totally prepared to respond to Florence. But he also praised his own much criticized response last year to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, despite the official death toll recently being raised to nearly 3,000 people. That's almost as many lives lost in the September 11th attacks. Our Kristen Welker joins us live from the White House. Kristen, what's the latest?
Lester, good evening. Tonight, President Trump is insisting his administration is as ready as anyone has ever been to deal with Hurricane Florence. The president describing the storm as tremendously big and wet. And when asked about lessons learned from those storms that devastated Puerto Rico last year,
the job that FEMA and law enforcement and everybody did working along with the governor in Puerto Rico, I think, was tremendous. I think that Puerto Rico was an incredible, unsung success.
One top Democrat calling those comments offensive, given that nearly 3,000 people died as a result of Hurricane Maria.
So here we have September 11th. NBC does their very best just to rip the president. Their very best to rip the president because he's prepared this time. When will they ever stop? Doug, thanks for your patience. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. They ain't never going to stop. Yeah. Oh, I just got a question. Yesterday, I was listening to this station, and they came on the news that Otter was saying that they're short on money on the state, and they're saying that they're going to have to jump our state taxes up. We're going to see more taxes on state this year. What the hell is that all about, Kevin? I mean, how do they expect to get votes when they're going to raise your taxes? Now, is that what I heard? Am I wrong? I heard it right on this station.
Right.
You got any info on it?
Well, I was surprised as well. Apparently, they couldn't figure out how to budget correctly, so they may not take as much from your withholding as they should. Then they're going to have to make it up at the end of the year, which when I heard this story, Doug, I was shocked because we've got millions of dollars of surplus. The economy in Idaho is the best it's ever been. That's what the politicians have told us. And not only that, but, we just spent about $150 million for HP. So if we can afford to spend that money on HP, we certainly can afford to do our jobs right when it comes to collecting taxes.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So is our maybe duly elected Mr. Little going to be the same way? I mean, he was coached by this jackass, as far as I'm concerned, and I voted for him. It's just like when I voted for Bush. I mean, you don't even know what you're voting, what you're getting. It's just like what you're seeing going on in Florida with Cruz, or is that Texas?
Texas.
I guess that's Texas, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look up Cruz and any of them guys that ran on the Republican ticket against Trump when they were getting nominated for the Republican presidency, them guys, look it up, them guys took money from Soros, and he was one of them. Now, how in the hell can you expect to stay in office when people find out about that if you're taking money from that frickin' puke? I mean, and then you see Florida, just like what I heard you guys saying on there, that Florida, they got a socialist or somebody like what was over there in Cuba. that's running for governor? Are you kidding me? Where in the hell is this country going to? I don't get this. I really don't get this, Kevin, at all. But keep up the good work. I really appreciate what you guys do because I get information just like what I heard about Otter yesterday. And yeah, I get pissed and I should say things I shouldn't say, trying to hold back my frickin' tongue. So anyway, good morning and thank you for letting me on.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Our man David in Nampa. Thanks for your patience, David. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Listen, about Bob Woodward, does anybody remember how absolutely spanked he got by Ted Koppel? Remember that? He supposedly snuck into a man who was in an irreversible coma 32 times. Now, he tried to sneak in. The CIA caught him. But he said he managed to defeat their security 32 times because, you know, they can't really guard a door. Had a conversation with a man who had, a tablespoon of his brain taken out? Okay, the man never woke up. And Ted Koppel busted him for it. He said, this is an artist rendering, and it was like a hospital, you know, that little table that pushes up to the bed and a couple of a chest of drawers. And he said, did we get it right? Is the bed here? Is the door here? Is it a bureau, or is it a wardrobe? And he said, Ted, I can't tell you. Reporters' sources are confidential. Reporters for who? House Beautiful? What are you talking about? Here is the luckiest man in the world. As many people have said, he's not a reporter, he's a stenographer. He got the story of his life because a little crybaby named Mark Felt wanted to be FBI director. You know, Hoover died 72 in May, and Watergate was June. And there were like 3 guys on the short list, and Mark Felt was one of them. And he thought if he could take Nixon down, that, his FBI director that he put in to replace Hoover would go down and he'd get it. Okay, let's remember that. As for this other thing, isn't it funny? In a few months, we're going to have the 20th anniversary of the president being impeached and not being removed. Do you remember how that happened? Conservative is a deal breaker. Just to say it is a deal breaker. And yet, Bill Clinton, who had his law license taken by the Supreme Court, the Arkansas Bar, and the American Bar, 3 different people took his law license. Let's remember we have the letter to the IRS. You need to investigate the Western journalism. That's something Nixon never did. What did the Democrats do? They swore an oath. In fact, they signed a book saying that they would do justice. And 5 minutes later, they were out on the steps of the Capitol at a press conference saying this is a political witch hunt and we have no intention on removing the president. Can I tell you why America works? You need to say this like every month. America works because we are descended from Thomas More intellectually. And I have problems with him, I know, but he said, if my father stood on one hand and the devil stood on the other, if the devil's claim be good, he should have right. And because he wasn't some prissy little Pollyanna, but he lived in the real world, he said, this is a hard saying and a hard duty. He said it was hard to say, it was harder to do. And the Democrats don't do it, okay? They resort, progressives, it's a lie. They're regressive. It's not just in that, but in everything. My gang, my tribe, my bunch, we're good, and you're bad. Like the number systems that have 1, 2, and many, you know, like a lot of primitive tribes who the word for a human is the word for their gang. You know what I mean?
No, I know precisely. So going back to this anonymous, you're a studied man. What do you make of it?
Assuming he's even real, and I wonder about that because it's not like he's ever going to be called to testify who he is. But assuming he is, yeah, what about him? This anonymous person.
Right. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's a lib, and the lib said, I think it's a collection of 5 people led by Huntsman. And I'm going, are you kidding me? 5 people would get together, have this cabal, and then send it to the New York Times, and we wouldn't know about it?
Well, remember, Barack Obama took 3 girlfriends. He's the president with no girlfriends, with no past, whatever. And he made them into one composite girlfriend, and the prostitute said, that was brilliant.
Right.
What do you mean brilliant? I'd call it dehumanizing. Look, it's not a play. You don't change something for staging purposes or for time. They're 3 human beings. So I don't know if it's 5 people. I don't even know if it's 1 person. Maybe it's, again, get out if you believe that. You know what it reminded me of? Donald Regan said something like 10 years ago in a book. He said, I forget the name of the author who interviewed him, and it was a bunch of people, and he said, Reagan figured out pretty early, and everybody said this, the presidency doesn't pay by the hour.
Right.
So at 5 o'clock, he went home, and the White House just exploded. Everybody went flying out to every Washington watering hole, telling them how they, as Batman and, Reagan, Batman and Reagan were saving the country, and they were Batman, but their sidekick, Ronald Reagan, helped a little bit. It took him 20 years to find out. He said, everybody thought they were the smartest person in the room. And he said, even you? And he said, especially me. He said, we thought we were the producers. He thought we were the camera crew. He didn't even memorize our names. He kept calling us the fellas. That's how important we were. I think that's who this guy, anonymous, if this person even exists, they think they're saving America. Yeah. Remember Crybaby Obama, who said, I set it up for you, I loosened it for you?
Right.
You said the jobs that would never come back. What you going to do, wave a wand? Those jobs are back and you set it up?
David, great call. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up next, we'll tell you about a school system that says yes to paddling. What do you think? It's easier to laugh when you're the paddler than the paddlee. I'll explain that story next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And coming up next hour, a lawmaker brags that she's going to impeach the president of the United States. Imagine when it was pro-life, it was you, it was me, it was others that said Obama should be impeached. And God bless pro-life. He said it consistently more than anybody else on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. And by the way, I don't know what happened to our signal yesterday. I don't know if it was the NSA. Well, no, that would be if Obama was there. Maybe it was the deep state. So I know many of you called. I know many of you talked to our great friend Linda. You emailed Ray Amaya, you emailed me. Could have been the deep state. But thankfully, we're back on the air, and we do appreciate you caring enough to make sure that we're good to go. And thanks to my brother, Victor Miller. No, he's not really my brother, but Victor's a great guy who is always the first to let me know when the signal goes down. And, like the president, I believe we're fighting the deep state. So we appreciate that. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. For many of us, when we went to school, we misbehaved. It wasn't spare the rod and spoil the child. It was get out the rod. I can remember many times being in the hallway, getting ready for the paddling, whether it was in Catholic school or public school. And it wasn't something I looked forward to. You take a look at education, childhood education today, and much has changed. Maybe you could call it the revenge of Dr. Spock, the noted child psychologist that came up with all these innovative ways to raise your kid. In our day, and maybe in your day, the corporal punishment was a thing, either at home or at school. Now you have a situation where people don't even get yelled at basic training. I'm not making a judgment here. I'm just giving you the score. You have people that they don't yell at their kids. Paddling is obsolete. It's barbaric. In the old days, we used to do the argument on talk radio, if it worked for me, it should work for you. But everything has changed except for one school district that we'll tell you about next that's bringing back the paddle. Before that, KIDO Talk Radio time, 6:56, traffic and weather together.
Jim Duthie.
Thank you, Jim. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. So this local school district has decided to bring back the paddling. Let's take a listen.
School is bringing back an old form of punishment, and the reason might surprise you.
Public schools have not done it for years, but a local charter school is bringing back the paddle.
GSIC, the Georgia School for Innovation in the Classics, sent home a letter this week asking parents for permission. Our Leah Fernandez went to the school in Hephzibah to find out more about the new corporal policy.
I was going to say, in the letter, was it, "Thank you, sir, may I have another"?
They sent this consent to paddle form home this week for parents to either say yes or no to this form of punishment. The superintendent told me they've gotten back a little over 100 forms, and almost a third of them give consent. But the majority of those parents are saying, no way.
In this school, we take discipline very seriously.
GSIC is going old school with a new policy for this year.
There was a time where corporal punishment was kind of the norm in school, and you didn't have the problems that you have.
You heard that right. The K-9 charter school is bringing back paddling students as a form of discipline.
It's just one more tool that we have in our disciplinary toolbox.
Parents got a consent to paddle form, asking them if they're okay with administrators hitting their child with a wooden paddle.
There's no obligation. It is not. It's not required. So a parent can either give consent for us to use that as a disciplinary measure.
Now, hold on. We're going to have to carry this over. My, oh, my. Could you imagine getting a letter from your school here in Idaho? And I love this guy. Now, in Georgia, and I've been paddled in Georgia, full disclosure, they don't mess around. But would you be willing to do that? We'll talk a little bit more about this and the changing dynamics of childhood discipline and childhood education. You have people now, in the old days, if you were at church, the kids screamed, they'd haul them out or go to the cry room. Today, the screaming kids are welcome. It is a changing time. Is it a better time? I think it's a better time to be a kid. Of course, that's always the case, right? Being an adult is overrated, children's. Kevin Miller in the morning. Thank you all for listening, no matter what your age. 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.